Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So this is my least favorite bill on this agenda, and I think that'll be evident pretty quickly. I've got a number of concerns with the way this is drafted. The notion of increasing access to voting, as I've stated a whole bunch of times here and in previous meetings, is something I agree with. The issue with increasing our voter registration and our voting participation is something that I agree with. The issue that I keep coming back to is that every time we increase that eligibility and participation, we also have to make sure that we are keeping track of what we are doing to preserve the veracity of our election system, that we make sure that we're only registering people who are truly eligible to vote, and that we only allow people who are truly eligible to vote, and that when we count the votes accurately. That seems like a simple request, but yet this bill seems to be drafted with none of those concerns in mind. It is willfully negligent is the way I would describe it in the way it attempts to go about automatic voter registration. What it does is it sets up something very similar to the Motor Voter Act. Essentially, there was a federal law passed which required departments of motor vehicles across the country to assist in basically registering folks to vote. There was some thought put into that legislation, though, and some requirements put upon states in the process of conforming to it. And namely, there is a requirement that some due diligence is done to make sure that the person is eligible and that the person being registered to vote attests to the fact that they are an eligible voter and they are aware that there is a penalty because a crime would be committed if they were not an eligible voter. This bill seems to ignore that in a couple of different cases. It's also interesting to me the exact places that we are expanding this additional automatic voter registration. The state of Connecticut interacts with the citizens of our state in numerous ways. There are state agencies that cover a myriad of things, from public health to public safety to transportation, you name it. But the thing that seems to be focused on in this bill is the creation of something called a voter registration agency. I had originally intended on going through this and doing it as a Q&A, but I don't think the chairs want to go through all that, and I'm just going to go through and describe my concerns with the bill. If they find something that they disagree with, I hope they will interject or speak after me to let me know where I'm going wrong. In Section 9-23N, it sets up something called voter registration agencies, which are the new entities which will have the ability to do as the Motor Voter Act does at motor vehicles. If you go through and look through the definition of what a voter registration agency is, you discover that these are public assistance offices, which basically means state agencies that administer or provide services, SNAP, Medicaid, TANF, things like that. Those are the DSS programs. I don't know why there would be such an emphasis to do automatic registration just for this population and not for the myriad of other people that interact with the state government. If we're concerned about increasing automatic voter registration, why aren't we doing automatic voter registration everywhere, including people that get pistol permits or hunting licenses? And those people seem to be overlooked in favor of people that are receiving state benefits. I would note that in the last several years, the Secretary of State has been touting the massive increase in voter participation in our state. She offered, wait a second here, the DMV commissioner, I think, testified recently that there were 265,000 new voter registrations and more than over 170,000 voter registration changes processed, helping to drive record-breaking voter registration over the last cycle. So do we need to be doing automatic voter registration in this way, given that we are experiencing increased participation? I think in our last general election we had the highest turnout ever. I also think the state of Connecticut is doing a great job. Again, I am in favor of finding ways to encourage people to be part of our electoral process, but we need to do it in a way we're keeping track, because if the citizens and the voters don't have faith in that process, there will be problems. People will rebel. They will reject our system of laws that are based on it. And I've seen it already. I have constituents who are absolutely furious with what they witnessed in the last election, and even the election before that. You know, rumors, whether they're true or not, about bags of ballots being found in Bridgeport, and all of the things that we know happened, like lines in New Haven, people not being able to be sworn in, mass swearing-ins of voters. These are circumstances that should never happen. I would like to see us adopt electoral election day policy that enables everyone who is eligible to vote to be able to do so without standing in a line and without having to go through a lot of aggravation. Now, that might require some effort on their part to register in advance, to show up at the polls on Election Day, but we should make lines a thing of the past. I think we can do that, and I think we should find ways to make it so it's not a chore that people dread having to go vote because of the pain that it is. All of the policies that are being put in front of us are only going to exacerbate those problems. So let me talk more specifically about this bill. There is also a cost associated with this, because essentially if we are going to create this automatic voter registration, motor voter type program, and we're going to implement it at DSS, that means that they're going to have to develop a new set of forms and or a computer system, and I don't know if that's been contemplated in this bill. Section 4 of the bill requires that public institutions of higher education shall automatically admit as an elector any applicant that qualifies for admission. So that makes me ask a lot of other questions, since great many students that go to our state institutions of higher education are out-of-state students. Are they automatically going to be registered to vote in Connecticut? Are they automatically admitted as an elector, as the bill says? If so, does the state that the student is from, where they are registered, are they ever notified? What is being done to prevent that person from voting in multiple states? And I don't want to accuse anyone of anything, but these are realities. They do happen. Are they enough to change an election? I don't know. But what they are enough to do is to cause people to have doubt in whether or not we are serious as a body in making sure our election laws are secure and reliable. What about students who are admitted to those institutions who are not even American citizens? Are those people automatically registered? Are they automatically admitted as electors, as the bill says? This policy, is it necessary when being passed in conjunction with Election Day registration for primaries, early voting, and no excuse absentee voting? It seems to me we are giving people lots and lots of chances to find ways to vote. I'll repeat something I said earlier today, which is that I think that we are coming up with lots of things that don't necessarily work together. Why, for instance, would you need Election Day to be a holiday if you have early voting? But yet we're pushing these bills all through. And I don't understand why. Why can't we have one plan that is clear that we're putting forward for the voters in our state so they understand what's happening? To put a constitutional amendment through for early voting that doesn't specify how many days doesn't make any sense to me either. And when it shows up on the ballot, I can promise you people are going to question that first and foremost, and they're going to say it's positively ridiculous. I have bigger issues with this bill, which is the process by which it works. The National Motor Voter Act requires one very important specific piece for it to work and to be reliable, and that is it requires people to attest to the fact that they are an eligible voter. I believe that is being overlooked in this bill in a number of ways. Bear with me a second. I just want to find the right sections in the bill. This is the one. In I guess it's in section 1, and it's lines 59 through 62. It's talking about any applicant that qualifies for such admission in accordance with blah, blah, blah. A condition that an applicant state and attest to meeting each eligibility requirement may be waived for any such eligibility requirement verified independently by said commissioner. So I think this is a blatant statement to say that under this bill, the requirements that exist in the Motor Voter Act that you have to attest to the fact that you're an eligible voter can be waived. It says so right in those words. So I think we might be in violation of federal law. And why on earth would we want to eliminate that valuable tool to make sure that we are warning people that they need to be eligible voters to register? There's also another section under Section 3, lines 136, 137, in that area, that basically says that people that are already in the motor voter program, it says that even if you've opted out, basically on every renewal, your information is going to be updated. Shall automatically admit as an elector any applicant that qualifies as such admission through the electronic systems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, you know, we just heard a bill, like, I don't know, 2 bills ago that was about protecting voter privacy and concerned about how people's information might be used. There are people out there, our constituents, that don't register to vote for the express purpose of the fact that they don't want anyone to have their information. So much they're concerned about it that they don't even register to vote. And yet this system registers everybody, no matter what. You don't get a choice. This eliminates the whole opt-out process by making it so it happens automatically on renewals. My main concern with this is what we're doing here is creating a system where we are going to be signing people up simply because they interact with DSS in some way. We have no prohibition in the state of Connecticut on people who are in the country unlawfully from interacting with DSS or even receiving benefits. I don't see a mechanism in this bill that prohibits them from being automatically registered. I don't see the attestation existing here, and I already know that there is no mechanism in our law that prohibits someone or checks whether someone is a citizen or an eligible voter or not. What we rely on is the fact that it would be very difficult as an undocumented person probably to walk into a town hall or wherever and register to vote, because you know you'd be committing a crime, because you would be in a situation where you're willfully walking up and suggesting that you are an eligible voter. This gets rid of that because it kind of makes it so it's so simple it just happens seamlessly where you never even actually have to go through that process. And this bill has been described as this process as a pass-through, that essentially it's ultimately the registrars who are going to go through the process of registering the people to begin with. But that's a lot different than the person standing in front of you handing you a voter registration request versus getting some electronic thing that says to put this one on the person on the voter rolls. This state needs to take its undocumented population seriously. I've talked about this in other committees. I believe that the federal government needs to fix that situation so that those folks can come out of the shadows and be counted properly. Maybe we could offer work permits or something like that. But one thing that I'm not prepared to grant them is the right to vote without going through our process and becoming citizens. This enables it, even if it doesn't necessarily actively say so. It endorses a process which makes it so simple, and it's going to happen without even someone willfully attempting to. I think it's dangerous policy. I think it's the worst bill that we have in front of us, and I think we ought to vote it down today rather than making a mistake and letting this kind of thing go forward. I also think that we should consider mechanisms to regain the trust of voters across Connecticut that their elections are being taken seriously, and that we are identifying that only the proper people are voting and their votes are counted. We need a verify system in place at registrars' offices so they can verify that it's people that are eligible to vote. And I believe we need some enhancements in the area of voter identification, although I'm very sensitive to the notion that that's not simple for every person. But we can do a better job if we really care about that. And I am sincere when I say I care about expanding opportunity and ability for people to get registered and vote. I have shown a willingness to try and work with the chairs here on bills that do that. But at the same time, I want to see us address the actual real-life concern that my constituents have, that our elections are legitimate.